right. Again, welcome everyone. I'm Victoria Gago, co-founder of European Tech School and European Blockchain Convention. Like as I said just before, welcome everyone. Just a few words about us for the ones that don't know us yet. So we are European Tech School and European Blockchain Convention. European Tech School is basically an online school where we do online blockchain Web3 courses. The cool thing is that all our lectures are live streamed, so nothing is pre-recorded. I guess, well, there's plenty of pre-recorded education content out there, but the cool thing is here that everything is basically live lectures. So then a few other words. Yeah, I mean, so as I said, I think really one of the cool things about our school is that all the lectures are live. Then our professors all come from leading companies in the space. So I think there is nothing better to be taught actually by leading expert in the space. So they are coming from companies as Consensus, IBM, Figment, Coinbase, Circle, and even other traditional players in the space such as Bosch or Renault actually. So yeah, that's basically a few words about us. If you are ever considering doing an educational program, you are very welcome to reach out to us at European Tech School. And again, as I said, welcome to everybody. I see a few more people joining in now. Welcome everybody. And should I say more about the school? No, I think that's it. This is basically European Tech School. So I would like now to introduce Dalia. She's our special guest today. She's Senior Product Manager at Chainalysis, one of the leading blockchain analytics companies in the space, if not the leading. I'm not sure, maybe you are the leading, right? So Dalia, the stage is yours, welcome. And before, of course, we want to get to know you a little bit better. So it would be nice to get a few words from you to understand who you are, but also to understand why did you decide to join the crypto industry?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Victoria and the ETS team for having me here. Hi, everyone. I'm Dalia Kandeil. Like Victoria mentioned, I'm a senior product manager here at Chainalysis. And a little bit of background into me, right? So yes, I work in crypto now. I'm a product manager now, but like pretty much everyone on this call, we take very different paths to where we are now. And I thought I'd share some of my journeys. And so I'm actually a computer engineer originally. And when I say originally, I mean like really originally. I'm not going to say how many years, but it's definitely been a while. I actually, I think career shifts has definitely been a theme throughout my career. I started off in academia, teaching the future generations, as I like to think of it, for a few years while doing a master's at my uni in the computer engineering department. And at a point in time, I'm pretty sure there are a few folks here who have done a literature review for a thesis. It's tough, but at some point I was like, not for me, you know? So I decided to move into something that's a little bit more applicative and get exposure to the like corporate industry and just industries as a whole. And so I pivoted into manufacturing management at the time, and then figured out that, well, actually, I always love kind of that little crux in between the technical bits and the applicative bits. And I really do enjoy simplifying kind of the technical for broader audiences. And so I moved into consulting. It's a mix of problem solving and doing exactly that, simplifying the complex. And a few years into that, I realized that, well, actually, the favorite part of that is kind of improving the products as you go along, right? Not just using them, and pivoted into product management at the time, and was at a very niche industry then before going into crypto. It's organizational transformation analytics, to be specific. And like some folks on the call, I thought I was the only one, but it turns out that this is actually a theme where crypto or Web3 in general kind of finds you as opposed to the other way around. And so I got contacted by folks from Chainalysis, read up on the blockchain and crypto space and also on Chainalysis, and really the rest is history. I thought I should take the plunge, as they say it, And it's been over 3 years now of taking said plunge, and it's still as exciting as ever.
Sorry, I'm back, Dalia. Very nice, very nice. And
Thanks.
also interesting to see how you went from studying computer science to be more on the academic side, and now being in the crypto space between, I guess, the tech side and the business side as a product manager.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
nice.
Thanks.
Cool. So I think another thing I would like to understand for you, I mean, how is it to work in crypto compared to some of the other industries that you've been working in the past few years?
I actually have a counter question. Like, how is it not? Right?
It's definitely not boring, right?
Definitely not boring. So it really checks off a few boxes for me. Like continuous learning, massive check. Being surrounded by incredibly intelligent and humble people, again, check. And it's really, for me, it's become the space for you to kind of get into and be in if you're looking to constantly push the boundaries of what it is that you know, right? And it's moving very, very quickly, which is a plus if that's what you're into. And that really appeals to me. And then from a slightly different angle, this has been like a few years, rather decades now, but from another angle, it's not every day that you really get the opportunity to shape an industry and actually be part of shaping an industry that's emerging and flourishing and really evolving every single day rather than here. And I always like to make that comparison with the good old days of the .com boom when internet founders were spinning up their companies at the time, right? I really do feel that it's very similar in that respect.
Very nice. I do agree. This is definitely not a boring industry. New things are coming up, right? Every month, every week. And you're right. I mean, this is definitely the space to be if you want to shape an industry, right? I mean, this is definitely. So
100%.
Yeah, very nice. Cool. And then, yeah, I would like also to understand, so it's still a very young industry. So what do you think, in your professional opinion, that's going to happen? I mean, before crypto is going to be mainstream, it's going to be something adopted in general and not something, it's still small now, right? I mean, it's growing like crazy, but it's still a small industry.
Absolutely. And I think you hit on a great keyword there, right? Mainstream. And I can't help but wear my product management hat in at least the first response to this question, because I think that in order for an industry to be truly adopted, right, it really needs to be accessible by everyone. And what I mean by accessibility in this sense is from a technical complexity perspective. Crypto, as it currently stands, is pretty technical, right? Like if you think to the olden days, I suppose, when you set up your first wallet or when you sent funds to someone else, it must have been like, not everyone can deal with hashes, right? Like just typing in the address. Like imagine if you'd gotten one of these kind of characters wrong. And so from my personal opinion, I really feel that crypto is very much in kind of the like chasm of the product adoption curve, and it needs for it to be a lot simpler and focus on like really solve some of the friction that you have with the consumer experience, and that's key in order for it to kind of cross that. And so I'd say that's the first part with me wearing my my product management hat on. But the second piece to this is really around, I'd say, trust and trustability in general. If you take a look at any of the like things that we take for granted, I don't know now, right? Like part of your day to day, if let's use a debit card as an example, that was actually created, I think it was back in the 60s or something along these lines. And it took a few decades in order for it to actually reach mass adoption, right? And the reason that happened, like any new technology where there's still fear to kind of start using it. I have to admit to being one of the slightly later adopters of Apple Pay, for example, but it's important in order for mass adoption to kind of take place. A catalyst for that is really support by institutions, having regulations in place, having just generally standards of conduct and whatnot. But I think that's kind of my take on it.
Very interesting. And yeah, I agree, of course. I mean, if something is not easy to use, this is this is definitely not going to help at all. Well, I mean, I remember when I was logging into the internet in the 90s. I mean, you know, you had to connect the modem and like whatever. I mean,
yes.
I mean, it wasn't extremely difficult, but still, there was some steps, right, to actually manage to connect to the internet. So of course, that was
definitely. I remember being the go-to personal for all things technical, right? Like, oh, the internet's not working, and you're like, yes, hit the reset button, everyone. You know, it's at the back of that router. But yes, I totally hear you.
Yeah.
Victoria,
Well, but also
how old are you with the modem thing and that?
Well, I mean, I'm 35, so when I was connected to the internet when I was young, that was the way to do. I do look younger, I know.
Yeah,
but no, but Dalia, what you also said, I mean, definitely like fear, and then of course regulation and like institutional adoption is extremely important, right? This is
absolutely.
This is key. And I'm even thinking now, this is just an example. I mean, I'm originally from Denmark, and we removed all like, how do I say, like physical banks, I don't know, like 15 years ago. So all grandmothers and granddads use credit cards and debit cards since 15 years ago. And now I live in Spain, and like, it seems like we still keep here like the physical banks, and then grandmother and grandpa can go in and do the stuff. I mean, so there's still a lot of like fear from that side. I mean, and I know there's nothing to do with crypto, but definitely, I mean, you need to kind of like, you know, support and remove this fear. And
absolutely. And like physical banks, right? You have that connection. You go into a bank, you see someone, you talk with them, you get the reassurance from all of those micro interactions, right? And they're like, okay, great. I now know I've sent my money to whoever, and I can be certain of that. So of course, there's like the personal interaction element to that as well, just from a psychological standpoint.
Yeah, indeed. Cool. Well, I think then now, Dalia, it's time to dig into the little quiz you have prepared, right?
Yes, this is one of my favorite parts.
Let's dig into it. Guys, be ready with your phone, because you're gonna scan a QR code now.
Yes, please. So this is actually one of my favorite parts whenever it is that I have one of these chats, and it's kind of a play on Truth or Dare, but in this instance, it's let's bust some myths kind of edition. And so let me just share my screen. And yes, this is a Ghostbusters kind of image for those of you who remember that. Yep.
Oh yes.
And so, like Victoria's mentioning, just quickly scan the QR code. Really, this part's meant to be as interactive as possible. No right or wrong answers, right? Like, just throw it out there, and let's kick it off. So, one of my first questions and favorite: what word comes to mind when you think of cryptocurrency? And feel free to throw anything in there, and we'll go through the results together. All right, I'll give it a few more seconds. All right, let's take a look. Nice. See, a few folks are still typing things in. Okay, so Bitcoin, that's, yep, one of the first ones, absolutely. I love how there's freedom there in capital. Fantastic. Future, love it. Awesome. All right. Well,
if it's bigger, it means more people wrote it.
I believe so, yeah.
I think so, right?
Yeah. All right. Cool. And for the next one, So, do you think crypto is anonymous and untraceable? True or myth? Give it another few seconds. All right, nice. Myth. I can definitely tell that you've probably taken courses with ETS here, which is fantastic. Nice. So yes, it is absolutely, it's absolutely a myth, right? As majority of you know, by the looks of it, sounds of it, blockchains are inherently public, right? They can't be, they're mutable ledgers, they cannot be changed or kind of tampered with in that sense. And the great thing about it is anyone, your average Joe Jane person, could just log in if they've got internet access, just connect to the internet, go to a block explorer, and the world's your oyster. You can take a look at all transactions happening on like Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other blockchain as well. And so, like, in a nutshell, crypto is actually a lot more transparent than other traditional forms of finance, like for example, do you have any idea of what's all the transfers that banks are sending from one person to the other? No, right? We cannot actually see that information, whereas with blockchains, you can, which is fantastic. All right, and then the next one, crypto is regulated. Truth or myth? Almost a 50-50 split there. Most folks think it's a myth. Let's take a look. It's actually true. So crypto exchanges, which are basically the equivalent of banks, I suppose, for crypto. It's a centralized exchange where you could basically send either buy crypto or kind of sell it and ramp out into fiat dollars, British pounds, et cetera, euros, et cetera, et cetera. And so crypto exchanges actually fall in the US and similar kind of formats here in Europe and just globally, depending on the regulations, they fall under the Bank Secrecy Act in the US. And really what that means is that they have to have anti-money laundering and know your customer policies and like procedures in place. And what that really means from a consumer perspective is you're going to go through identity checks, right? If you compare it to traditional finance, you can't really set up a bank account without them first checking, number one, who you are, right? So identification, and doing some form of screening over your source of funds. And that's very similar to what exchanges need to do as well. And so they have to have AML policies and controls in place. And in fact, a lot of the blockchain analytics tools in the space, including ours, and in this case, our compliance products, allow exchanges and kind of the private sector within the crypto ecosystem to do exactly that, to be able to monitor that transaction activity. And if there's anything that seems fraudulent, right, then they could take further action and alert the authorities, for example. And there are a lot of trends moving across, like globally, where regulation's definitely becoming way more of a hot topic. It's escalating pretty quickly, and policy and regulations are kind of slowly trickling through as well. And then for my personal favorite, so one thing I didn't get into, and the reason this is my personal favorite and I'm biased, is because I am a product manager for within our investigative suite. And so I'm actually product manager for one of our investigative solutions. And so I'm curious to hear your take on whether you think crypto is used primarily for illicit activity or not. Let's give that a couple of seconds to brew. See the little numbers almost stop moving. All right. Okay, excellent. Folks seem to think it's a myth, right? 74% of you all that had entered it, and you're right. So it is a myth. It's not primarily used for illicit activity, but like any emerging technology, criminals were sadly one of the first early adopters. And because of that fact, they help shape a lot of the negative connotation around the space and its overall reputation. But the really amazing thing about this is because of the transparency of the blockchains, it really allows for analytics to be built on top of it, and then to use all of that data in order for companies such as Chainalysis to tie actual criminals to real world entities wherever possible. And we're going to kind of cover that. And a fun little fact and tidbit is based on our research and analysis, actually illicit share of cryptocurrency activity was very, very negligible at like only just under 0.15% last year, which is really fantastic to see. And if you're ever interested in reading more about illicit activity in the space, like feel free to check out our crypto crime report on our website too. All right, and I'll hand it over to Victoria.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dalia. Thank you. And also cool to see that only 0.15% of the activity last year was dirty activity when it comes to crypto. This is, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't have the number when it comes to cash. I guess it's difficult, or fiat money, but I'm sure it's higher than 0.15%. So very interesting to see that. Cool. Okay, Dalia. So I would like to understand a little bit more now about Chainalysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So what's the mission? I mean, what's the mission of your company? Why are you here? Why are you here? Why are you so big? Why are you so big?
Well, excellent question, right? As always. So really I'd like to simplify it in one sentence, right? When it comes to the mission, our motto is really building trust in blockchains. And it comes around securing the future for it as well, right? So the way we do this is by analyzing publicly available information. So blockchain data, also kind of providing all of that and working with all actors and players in the ecosystem as well, like government agencies, exchanges, financial institutions from across the globe, and really provide them compliance and investigative tools for them to be able to understand the space better, understand what's happening on the blockchain. And as a simple example, if someone's investigating a scam or a hack, for them to actually have the tools at hand to be able to do exactly that, follow the money. And we'll go into that in a little bit.
Cool. And so as a company, how can you then help the industry implement better practices? So, and I touched on this just a little before, right? In one of the earlier questions. So I think that, and again, personal opinion, like without crypto cannot actually thrive, right? Without the development of very clear regulation, implementation of standard audit practices, and actually, and that really translates into some form of collaboration between both public and private sectors, right? Like imagine had debit cards or even the banking system as a whole. Imagine if that weren't regulated, it probably wouldn't be such a core integral part of our day-to-day life if that hadn't happened, right? And so going back to your question, Chainalysis, like our products facilitate exactly that. They facilitate that collaboration, and we don't just stop there. So we also host a conference on a regular basis. It happens several times a year, all over the world, really. So it's global, where we bring together leaders from the different areas and experts from all parts of the cryptocurrency ecosystem, really in order for folks to share their different experiences and expertise and even success stories, and most importantly, best practices, and that way facilitates that conversation between everyone. Cool. Very nice. And how many are you now in the company? Do you know that?
Oh, wow. It like definitely over 800 folks
Whoa.
at this point and counting.
Whoa.
It's grown tremendously since I first joined, for sure.
Wow. So what number employee were you? Do you know that? Number 200? I don't know.
14 something.
Number 140 something.
Yes.
Okay.
I forget that last digit, but I'm pretty sure it's something in that ballpark.
Nice. Very nice. Cool. Okay. So, I mean, you already talked a little bit about the industry, but I mean, I think it's interesting for the audience to better understand. So what's blockchain analytics about? Because after that, we're going to dig into one of your business cases study. So I think tell us a little bit more about the industry, and then from there we can dig into the case study.
Sounds like a plan. So blockchain analytics really, if we pare back the blockchain piece just for a second, right? It comes to the bread and butter of any data analytics, right? So there's going to be a data enrichment process and phase first and foremost. And in the context of blockchain analytics specifically, what that means is it takes publicly available information. So like transaction data, for example, X address sent to Y address and it sent this amount with a transaction hash with particular date. And then it enriches, let's say, all of that information, all of that data with open source intelligence. And the idea behind this is to tie those pseudonymous entities that we were just discussing, right, in one of the questions, and tie those to real life entities. And so that's kind of the main goal, let's say, and what blockchain analytics is. And the way that's done is, of course, using, like I mentioned, using open source intelligence, proprietary information. And if we were to use an example, just to make this clear, I for one, always like an example, and also a very visual person. So let's say there's a crypto scam that's being advertised online, right? They're probably going to have an address in order for you to send money to them, for example. And so you can very quickly say, okay, great, this address is actually tied to that particular scam and kind of operation, and then use other ways of enriching the data and like proprietary bits and pieces to kind of enhance that and kind of grow that entity even further, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of the data piece, right? And without that data platform, there wouldn't be able for you to do any of the analysis, hence the term analytics. And so the second piece to this is around all of the reporting that comes on top of that, right? So for example, how many transactions has a particular address or entity, for example, been kind of involved in? When were they last active? And kind of build all of that. And most importantly, and this is where the anti-money laundering policies and whatnot that I'd mentioned, it's really important to know if a particular entity was also involved in any illicit activity by tying them to the real world entities that I mentioned before. And really, all these two things kind of are the engine that power all of the workflows that the entire ecosystem really need. So auditing, investigating bad actors, and even compliance as well.
Thank you, Dalia. So I think now it's time to dig into the case study, but actually I would like to ask our audience to put their camera on just 1 second so we can have a little picture of you guys. Yes, Carlos, fantastic. Richard, also good. Yeah. Oh,
To check people are here, right?
Yeah. Make sure that you're here. And then we want you to smile for a second. And then we're going to dig into the case study with Dalia. Yes, are you ready with a beautiful smile? Carol? Oh, yeah, good. Daniel, are you taking the photo or should I? Or I can't, but I'm smiling anyway.
Yeah,
Okay,
I can do it. Let's
good.
wait 10 seconds for a few more
you just
faces.
stick with your smile. Oh, more faces. Oh, because you're going to take from each screen. Okay, but I'm ready. Gabby, good. Say cheese. Should we smile now, Daniel?
Okay,
I
good.
know. Okay, sorry. I know you kept this map for a long time, but you know, yeah, we needed to take a few pictures. Fantastic, guys. Okay, Dalia, we are ready now to dig into the case study. Thank you,
Awesome.
guys.
Alrighty. Let's jump in. Can everyone see my screen again?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, so for the second fun fun piece, again, biased, right? So blockchain analytics in action. I thought it would be fun to walk you through two things. Number one, an example of illicit activity. Of course, with the caveat I mentioned that illicit activity makes a teeny tiny portion of the funds and activity in general on the blockchain, but it would be fun nonetheless to see how, if we were in the shoes of investigators, and dare I say, I always like to use this, and I'm not sure if there are any James Bond fans in the group, but I like to think that I actually work with Q to help James Bond kind of catch the bad guy. So let's pretend we're James Bond here, just for funs and giggles. So I'll walk you through an example of actually an NFT kind of hack. So in our example, a victim unfortunately had purchased, not unfortunately, not this bit, but they had purchased a bunch of NFTs for our purposes. And unfortunately, this is the unfortunate part, they fell victim to a phishing scam, like the rest of us, unfortunately. And the reason I really enjoy this particular case study, it involves one of kind of the first, at least that I've heard of, real life application of an NFT, which is pretty sweet. And so I thought we could walk through it and actually see some of the blockchain analytics products in action, right? So we've got a bunch of NFTs that were stolen. And so going back to James Bond, let's pretend we're James Bond investigating this case right now. And what you'd probably want to do, what we'd want to do at this point in time, is figure out who stole the NFT, right? Figure out where it went. And so without blockchain analytics, what you'd probably be starting off with is something that looks like this. You'd start off by searching, if you know, the transaction hash where that NFT was stolen. You'd go onto a block explorer, you'd search for it, you'd see, you could just based on this, you'd be able to say, okay, great, a Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT was sent from one address to the other. You probably have no idea what 0xC8, like who they are, right? But you're like, okay, great, I'm going to look for 0xC8 and actually have to go through this every single time per transaction, right? That for me, I don't know about you, but that for me would be a little bit mind-boggling. I would definitely prefer something that's more visual in nature. And so this is where blockchain analytics comes into play, right? It's the visualization piece. And so one of the, remember how I said there were 4 NFTs? Just one of them was on our, one of the transfers and stolen NFT transactions was on the screen before. But here, what you're actually very easily seeing is the actual transfers of the NFT that were stolen from our victim, right? So you could see the Bored Ape Yacht Club one here. You could see that it was sent like this. The victim lost it, the hacker gained it, and you could see this repeated for all of the other NFTs that were stolen as well, and where the hacker kind of got control of that. And at this point in time, and I know we said we'll play James Bond for our later case study, but let's again pretend for just a split second to be the hacker. What do you think they'd want to do here, right? They're probably in this to make a quick few bucks. And so what they'd actually do here is sell it to folks that don't necessarily realize that they're purchasing a stolen NFT. And so going to our next kind of step in the puzzle, you'd want to follow the transfers from the hacker to the NFT, right? And you probably want to know how much they paid for it. So you could see that for the Bored Ape Yacht Club here, they actually made like around over 100 ETH in this instance, which is a pretty hefty sum at the time. And they repeated that for every single NFT, right? So they kind of sold it, they got ETH, and then at this point in time, again, thinking with our hacker hat on, what they'd be doing is they'd want to try to obfuscate their trail, right? They're going to try to throw off James Bond off their scent by any means possible. And so what they do is use obfuscation techniques and things that are like tools that are available to them as part of the crypto ecosystem as well. And one of these things is actually they could start hopping from one chain to the next to another, right? And really what this means is we saw on our other end that they had sold, right? So they sold the NFTs for ETH here. And what they did is they actually sent that ETH, swapped it on a bridge. First, they swapped it to Ren BTC, and then they used a bridge to hop from one chain to another, in this case from Ethereum to Bitcoin. And they took those funds and they started using other obfuscation techniques to mask their trail. Now, eventually at this point in time, what you as shifting back to James Bond, I appreciate that we keep going back between hacker and James Bond here, but going back to James Bond for a second, what you're really after as an investigator at this point is you want to be able to tie them to some form of cash out point, and a cash out point in this instance is going back to traditional finance, right? So they'd go to an exchange as a simple example, and they'd go there and they'd swap all of their crypto, for example, in this case, Bitcoin, and they'd swap that out for let's say dollars in this case. And really what you're after here at this point is being able to identify who they are. So remember the AML policies that we'd mentioned, and when you're actually signing up for an online kind of account with an exchange or other instances, what you'd probably need to do is provide your identification. And this is kind of what law enforcement or James Bond would be going for. They try to identify, number one, that cash out point with the goal of figuring out who that person is. And what they've done here is kind of split the BTC after they've chain hopped from Ethereum to Bitcoin, and try to split their funds over several addresses before actually consolidating it and cashing out. And that's really it for me on this one. I thought I'd give you a little bit of a teeny tiny taste of what a crypto investigation would look like with all of the bells and whistles, and appreciate, of course, that this is high level and would naturally involve a lot more detail. But yeah, hope it's at least gotten you interested to know more.
And just to understand, in this specific case, did you then figure out the name of the hacker?
That would be the ultimate goal. Okay.
So yes. I guess yes, right? I mean, just for me to understand.
Yep, that would be what would happen typically, but not necessarily sure for what a specific one, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Very nice. Thank you for making it so visual.
My pleasure.
Very nice. So guys, don't consider hacking anything, because you're gonna there is tools to figure out all this. Very nice. Thank you, Dalia. Okay, I think now